Om Ano Bhadraha Kratavo Intu Vishwataha. Good morning all. On behalf of Vivekananda Study Circle IASC, I Chandan J welcome everyone present here for the mind illuminating talk on the contemporary battles for a viable consciousness theory and an interactive session with Professor Rajiv Malhotra ji and Manogna Sastry ji. We are honored to have all of you here. Let us begin this wonderful morning with a sacred chanting of Shanti Mantra. I request Ishwar to join us. Thank you.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Gananam Tva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavim Kavinamupamashravastamam Jyeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashrinvannodhibhiseda Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Sahana Vavato Sahano Bhunakto Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Ishwar. A brief introduction about Vivekananda Study Circle, Indian Institute of Science. We work with the objective of providing opportunity and guidance to interested youth to acquire a clear understanding of life, values, and culture in the light of life and teachings of Swami Vivekananda. To this effect, we students of Vivekananda Study Circle, IASC, meet every week to read and discuss Upanishadic message of Swami Vivekananda and the unbroken tradition of Indian spirituality in the light of modern thought and modern needs. So in this regard, we have a very illuminating soul. So our own Rajiv Malhotra ji, will be going ahead with the talk. So I request our Sangeet to give a welcome address. Thank you.
Namaskaram everyone. On behalf of Vivekananda Study Circle IASC, I would like to welcome our Honorable Speaker Sri Rajiv Malhotra ji and Vijaya Vishwanathan ma'am and the respected audience present all here. Wholehearted greetings to you all. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Devduti and Sangeet. Now I request Mohan sir to introduce our guest for the day.
Namashriyati Rajaya Vivekananda Surye Satchitsaka Surupaya Swamine Tapaharini. I am an alumni of the institute. I worked here for about a decade, and that was about 30 years back, I guess. And I'm very honored to be invited by the Vivekananda Study Circle, which was existing then as well. In fact, an avatar of that earlier was the Vivekananda Students Association. And it continues in this nice form now. I'm very honored to be invited by them here and to introduce both Rajiv ji and Manogna Sastry. Should Rajiv be introduced? That's the question that I had. And I'm sure you guys who have come here have come not because you are curious, but because you know something about him. Am I right? Those who do not know Rajiv, please raise your hands. Oh, there's 2-3 gentlemen. Okay, for 4 people. So for them, I shall introduce Rajiv ji. He is an incredible man, born of India, but for the world. And what is he trying to do? Given the life experiences, I'm going to do a very unconventional introduction. I hope it's okay with you, right? Born of the experiences of having his parents migrate from the then traumatized Pakistan into India to survive and into Delhi. Rajiv ji grew up in Delhi, did his, I think, bachelor's in physics from St. Stephen's, and then he went on to pursue his master's in the US. And master's he did pursue in the world of computer engineering and did a bit of work in the world of artificial intelligence. But that's not the point. The point is, like a typical aspirational American Indian there, he grew up into the ranks of the capitalist world, and soon he was like, I think, one of the key people in the world of IT&T, not AT&T, but IT&T, and was an investor in several companies, etc. But then, reality bites, and that's where Rajiv kind of stood out compared to others. What did he do? He kind of took a stand that I shall stand for me. What is my culture? What is my heritage? What am I? And he dedicated his life for the past 30 plus years into showing that spine. Okay? What is that spine? Of confronting the distortion, the disinformation, the malinformation that's been spread around in the name of understanding, in quotes, culture about India, right? And he has been doing this job of being a sadhaka, a tapaswin, of trying to wake up the masses. There's a slumbering India, India with the power elite, which is so very subservient to the Western interests, right? And he kind of thought we should liberate ourselves from that before we really seek for the mukti, the higher level mukti. And in that journey, he, of course, was sponsoring a lot of research, found the academics were not that much very strong in terms of taking up a stand, because they used to take sponsored research, do what the funding agencies ask for. To Rajiv, they'll do what he wants for and then keep quiet. Right? That doesn't work out well, because you need to have the conviction of heart to be able to stand by what you have researched and come across in your field, and then to be able to do that despite money coming or not coming. Then Rajiv decided that he is going to take up the challenge himself. Okay, that is when his first book came out, Breaking India. Right? He uncovered, along with Aurobindo Neelakantan, a lot of interesting facets of how things are changing in the world of Tamil Nadu. Okay, very interesting book, and that's where I came across. In fact, very interesting the way I came across Rajiv. I was searching about Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in the net, and then I came a long article, 35-page article in a website called Sulekha, and that was a rebuttal of something that somebody had talked very ill about Ramakrishna, and Rajiv was the author for that. That's when I said, here's a guy who's really taking up the cudgels for the misinformation that's about Ramakrishna, and this is something that I should really look up, know who he is. And then, as destiny decides, he came around to Bangalore, and I was in a situation where I ended up organizing the first event of his in Bangalore, if I'm right, I don't know.
No,
maybe
much earlier, I'll tell you. Okay,
he has come here earlier too, right? And Breaking India book release happened in a very silent way long back, and the videos are there in the YouTube, okay? Now, why am I giving you this long-winded introduction? It is to imbibe that spirit that we are all here. And Rajiv is one of the big pioneers of that Indic Renaissance. If today you see Indic Renaissance happening in a very big way, and if you kind of notice carefully, a lot of the terminology that you see being used around everywhere, it's all like starting from him, okay? To that extent, we are all indebted to you, Rajiv, for the leadership that you have shown. And it's very important that while we all agree and agree to disagree, we also need to know how to respect, and we need to know how to have the integrity to know who did what. That's very important, right? And that's where Rajiv stands out. And on that note of introduction, I'd also like to say we have a young scholar, Srimati Manogna Sastry, who's been working in the world of Indology, or rather Swadeshi Indology, if I may say so. And she's a prolific author, brings in the research of the best of the West and the East. And this is where Vivekananda Study Circle fits in. Vivekananda took the universal message of prajna, of Chaitanya, that our rishis in India had thought through, experimented, transformed, and kind of achieved, if I may kind of use a word, into doing what is this thing called currently, the phrase is self-realization, right? So what are rishis this thousands of years back? What do we find now? There are a lot of these very interesting theories of consciousness that people peddle, and then invariably a lot of jnana is taken from here, and typical possibly attitude of the current contemporary academic circles, nothing is acknowledged, no roots are traced. People just don't understand, because the West looks at the lens, with the lens of a utilitarian entity, and here we have Rajiv representing the sadhakas, right? Sadhakas will not go fight those battles. Rajiv is doing it. And that's very important. That's why we are all here. And I think on that note, with this brief introduction, Rajivji, I hope I've done justice to you. I am thankful that Vivekananda Study Circle invited me to give this brief note. And I'm also thankful that as part of our efforts, we carry this universal message of Vedanta, of Chaitanya, of Prajna, Prajnanam Brahma, right, into our own lives and across the world. It's very important. Okay? Thank you so much.
This book. Now, I have been a great reader of Sri Aurobindo. Is one of the texts I started as a child also. His book, The Life Divine, very transformative. How many of you know the relationship between Sri Aurobindo and Swami Vivekananda? So 4 or 5. Okay, good. At least some people know. So you know, this is important. Neither the Sri Aurobindo people pay homage to Vivekananda as their guru's guru, nor the Vivekananda people need to bother. So when they were celebrating the 120th or 125th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, they put out a big book. And most articles were written by insiders, people who are their own monks and all. I was invited, I was one of the very few invited to write an article on anything I wanted. Anything I wanted. And it is one of the largest articles. But it's a summary of something very important. I did not do the normal homage to Vivekananda, which everybody else I know will do anyway. Why should write the same thing? I wrote about Sri Aurobindo as Vivekananda 2.0. I said one of the greatest tributes to a guru is he produces a disciple who takes it further. So the entire Sri Aurobindo legacy and his thought comes from Vivekananda. Now, how do I know this? Because Sri Aurobindo wrote it. When he was a kind of, he was not a violent guy, but because of his ideas, the British Empire felt that he's going to break down the British Empire. Imagine a man, an unarmed man, never preaching violence, considered very dangerous. So he was put in jail on charges of sedition against the British Empire. Sri Aurobindo, in Alipur jail, he was thrown. And there he got visits from Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda had passed away, he died, he left his body. But he got, Sri Aurobindo writes, many details is written that Vivekananda visits him and initiates him and gives him the gyan and gives him the insight to how to move forward. Not just several hours on one day, but for several days he gets the darshan of Swami Vivekananda, and that is what turns him into who he is. So I said, you know what? The whole Aurobindo group should be acknowledging this, and the whole Vivekananda group should be also acknowledging, but they keep separate, they don't know, they have their own political, whatever the heck it is. This is very strange. So when I wrote this article for the Vivekananda's anniversary, they said, no, sir, you are so good, write about Vivekananda. I said, I'm writing about Vivekananda as his ideas manifested further, after he died, it manifested further through Sri Aurobindo. So what did I write? That's what is here. So now I come to the Aurobindo part of it. So when Darwin had come up with evolution theory, it was not there was no spirituality involved. There was no room for divine. It was just mechanical biology that kind of keeps evolving. Better species, new species, sort of like machine learning. You know, the biology is a learning system like, you know, algorithm learning. And so there was a big fight between the church and Darwin. Church said there is creation. God created the world. And Darwin said there's no God at all. And it is, evolution is a mechanical scientific process. So this is the fight between science and religion in the West. We never had that. We never had that fight. So Vivekananda makes a very historic contribution, which I write in this book. Part 1 is Vivekananda says that divine involutes as matter. The divine's immanence, he calls it involution. Involution. And because the divine is involuted in matter, matter is able to evolve. So involution comes before evolution. Involution is a prerequisite to evolution. So evolution is not just mechanical, it's being guided. There is a certain purpose, divine purpose, which is driving the evolution in a certain direction. So he is the one who came up with involution and evolution. How did I discover it? Because Vivekananda people don't talk even about it. They talk about all kinds of things, they don't talk about it. I discovered it because this is the foundational idea of Sri Aurobindo. His entire philosophy is based on how consciousness becomes inconscient matter, it's involuted in matter, and then this matter evolves to the next level and the next level, and at each jump the new avatar comes as a further consciousness coming down and move it forward. So it is consciousness's super consciousness's grand plan to have this whole jagat, this whole Vyavaharika realm is a manifestation with a purpose. And this involution, evolution are the two paired things. Involution of the divine into matter. As matter, it is matter. Matter is sacred. That is why we have rivers and all of these things which they call idol worship. They're all the immanence of the divine. Because immanence and transcendence, the two pairs, are very important in our philosophy. And Sri Aurobindo really popularized this involution, evolution. I had to look it up. I said, there's a chance that he got it from Vivekananda. And sure enough, I have the 7 volumes or whatever collected works of Vivekananda. I looked at the back of the index, and involution is there in every volume, pretty much. And so I asked some secretary of mine that you make a copy of all the things that have to do with involution. And it's hundreds of pages. So many talks, so many writings, he's talking about involution, evolution. And then I said, I take that and I take what Sri Aurobindo did, and it's very clear that Sri Aurobindo took that idea from his guru, whom he acknowledged. He took the idea of involution, evolution, and took it further. So we should be unified. This is a very interesting thing, So I have discovered all this. Now, Sri Aurobindo's involution, evolution becomes the cornerstone, the root of a whole system, which I want to have Manogna. She works in Infinity Foundation. We've mentored her. She's one of our good outputs of a good scholar, and so she's co-authored me in this. So I will not get into further details because I want to give you the meta-narrative, and then she'll get into some details. So this involution, evolution is a smoking gun telling me, wow, this is connected with Sri Aurobindo, with the Swami Vivekananda. Not only connected with Swami Vivekananda, now if you look at Swami Vivekananda, how does he explain it? He explains it based on Sankhya. He goes back to, so it means that our Vedic tradition has this idea, becomes modernized by Vivekananda in resolving the Western conflict between science and religion, which he says we don't have, because we have involution, evolution. So Bhagwan plays a role in the involution, and then the evolution is biology. So we have reconciled and unified what you call science and religion. This is where my philosophy of science background comes in. That's why I had given you all this, because I'm more interested in that. So this, we have no schism, conflict, clash between the divine side, spirituality side, and the science side. And this is one of the important frameworks of involution, evolution. Thanks to Swami Vivekananda, and you are the Vivekananda Society, you should all know these things. And thanks to him, and then Sri Aurobindo taking it further. Now becomes another fight I have to get involved in. Now I don't know how many fights I keep having to get involved in, but there's another fight, because when I'm involved in the Aurobindo ashram in the 90s, and my foundation is giving a lot of grants for village development in Auroville. There are all these kind of things going on, and we've given grants to the Pondicherry Aurobindo ashram and individual scholars here and there. We're doing that. I discover that just like Vivekananda's and Sri Ramakrishna's legacy was being hijacked by these people writing Kali's Child and so on, the same thing happening to Aurobindo. And just like the Vivekananda followers and Ramakrishna followers were not interested in defending it, same thing with the Aurobindo. His followers not interested in defending him. It's happening. There's a man called Ken Wilber in USA. He's considered a thought leader. And some people, his followers have nicknamed him the Einstein of consciousness. So he's Einstein of consciousness. So, and they all attribute that he came up with these ideas, Wilber's ideas. This whole idea of super consciousness and future of consciousness, which is Sri Aurobindo's quintessential theory of consciousness, taking it from Vivekananda, taking it from Vedic sources, very clear about it. No cover up. He is very clear. Vivekananda was his guru, and these are all Vedic ideas. Very clear. So that is being hijacked. And hijacked in what sense? Wilber partly plagiarizing, and he changes the nomenclature. He gives it something else, name, to hide the source. Sometimes it distorts to show originality, that it's different, and also distorts to make it fit the Western framework, which is very different. So we want to make it fit into the Western framework. And sometimes you start insulting Sri Aurobindo and the whole Indian tradition as, world negating, otherworldly people who are not socially responsible. So this idea that the Hindu mystic is somebody who doesn't care about society. We have to come and save their people, because they don't know how to help poor people. They don't care. They don't know how to make progress. They don't have that culture of progress, social advancement. They're socially backward. See, they're so poor. So we have to come and save them and give them modernity, progress, teach them science. They don't know these things. They're just mystics. So they're very good mystics, but they don't know how to run their lives in their society. And British ran their government took over because we were civilizing them. This is called the civilizing mission. We're helping these people. And so this whole idea is still there in the Western, subconscious about who we are and their responsibility to save our Dalits, to save our minorities, all this kind of nonsense. And this business of what happened in Bangladesh is a part of this Breaking India only. So you have to understand that when I'm doing these things, they are very philosophically grounded. And I'm doing a Purva Paksha, which you are required to do. I'm not some big controversial fellow. I am controversial for the right reasons. You have to do this. You see, if you are afraid of controversy, Vivekananda was very big provocative person. Sri Aurobindo was a very provocative person. Whether you like Gandhi or not, he was a controversial fellow. Whether you like whatever you may say about Jesus, he was a nice man, decent human being, and he was so provocative and so controversial that they had to crucify him. An unarmed man who never talked about violence and never committed violence had to be killed because of only what he's saying. His thoughts are so intolerable. So if you look at Einstein, very controversial. To say that all Newtonian physics is wrong is a very controversial thing for a young man 100 years ago to say. You see, so you can't be afraid of controversy, because that is what disruption is about. You have to be disruptive. You make progress. You have to say things that people may not want to hear. So I don't consider being controversial an issue for me, but some other people get scared and they say, oh, we can't have controversy here. Well, why you have a university if you don't want to provoke ideas? Why you have a university? And it's such an insult to our tradition not to do Purva Paksha, but to say, okay, he said it, must be correct. Because he said it, we don't want to talk back, all this kind of stuff. I consider it tamas. I consider it laziness. I consider it mental incompetence. We don't have that vigor, intellectual vigor of, samvad and debate. And we don't have that. That is our rishis were like that. So you have to, as a Vivekananda circle, you have to pick up such topics. You have to pick up such topics, and this is not about modern politics. You have to pick up topics which are deep about the metaphysics, the philosophy of science, where it is contentious with something else, and your own views on it. You have to do that. So now this book, I've given you a whole meta-narrative of some part of my life also, in trying to tell you how the book is positioned, because I've obviously spent 25 years doing this book. Manogna joined a few years back and became part of the project. And the third co-author, Kundan Singh, he joined about 6 months back. I brought him into this. So, but I've wanted to do this for a long time. Now this book, to tell you, focus on this book with all this background. This book is my decision in the 90s that somebody has to give a rebuttal to defend Sri Aurobindo vis-a-vis these Westerners who have hijacked his tradition and taken away this whole theory of consciousness, this whole theory of evolution, which Sri Aurobindo based on the Vedas, and which they've recycled as their own. Somebody has to do it, and nobody in the Pondicherry or Auroville want to do it, and I've made dozens of visits there, so I know all those people. And then I met a senior person called K.D. Setna. He died at the age of 106 later. At that time, he was in his 90s, and he was on a wheelchair. he used to be Sri Aurobindo's right-hand man. Sri Aurobindo would often write and he would type. And then he would go back for corrections and for clarifications, and he would discuss and debate. And so Sri Aurobindo had nicknamed him, and he was very fond of this man, this young man. And so he was in his 90s in a nursing home, and people said he's not talking to many people, you just go and do darshan and come back. But he wanted to spend hours and hours with me when he found out what I'm doing. He said, you have to do this. So he's the guy who told me, this is my swadharma, I have to write this book because nobody else is writing it. And because I had that determination, rigor, hard work, being a scientist, you know. So he gave me a lot of things to read, gave me leads. And then there were two other people. One was Kirit Joshi, who was education minister in Indira Gandhi's time, and in Gujarat, education minister also. He was an Aurobindonian. He encouraged me. And then the ex-president of Singapore was an Indian, Aurobindo follower called Devan Nair. He also encouraged me. So I took this on as my Swadharma, a project, one of many, many projects that I've been working on, and I have to finish them off now before it's too late. So this is that project. And this project basically repositions this whole theory of consciousness evolution, which has become too much in the hands of the West, like they have produced it out of nothing, and it repositions it back into our framework, which is a Vedic framework, and uses Sri Aurobindo's writing. So we compare a column of this is what Sri Aurobindo wrote, this is what the other fellow wrote, how they compare, where they compare. It's like a Purva Paksha, very systematic Purva Paksha. So that is what this is for. And similar works need to be done for all our gurus. So you should take on a project to write about the legacy, unacknowledged legacy of Vivekananda. I would love to work with you on this. It's a project of mine, but I don't have enough bandwidth to do all this. I have a lot of material. And it's not enough to write a little article here. Not enough to give one Manthan talk and have some YouTube video, and not like that. You need a pakka, several hundred pages volume, maybe multiple volumes, which will be lasting for decades. It will have a life of a generation or two. You need to do something at that level of research, and you need to create a group of scholars who want to take on this project. And I'll help you, mentor you, lead you, guide you, but I need young people who take ownership, you see. And so what I did for Aurobindo, I want to do for other gurus also, but I need shishyas from those domains. There are many gurus that have been misrepresented, and if you break the Guru Parampara, the Guru Shishya Parampara, that's one of the strategies of the breaking India forces. Because as long as another generation will come and start all over to continue the thread of whatever that Guru did, you do whatever you want to do about this Guru, but his Shishyas will revive it. So they have to finish that off. That is part of their plan. So your whole purpose as Vivekananda people, has to include, while you should study and improve yourself and do the meditation, very, very important as a step one. But having done that, those who are senior and involved in this for a little bit longer should say, let's do a project where we actually commit to a 1 year, 2 year project or multi-year project to produce a solid work on the unacknowledged debt, unacknowledged influences of Swami Vivekananda, which is so much more than just we went to Chicago and gave that talk and whatnot. That's fine, but everybody talks about it. There's a lot more that happened as a result of his influence. Throughout the early 1900s, so many people, including some who got the Nobel Prize, in literature, in philosophy, so they owed their quintessential ideas to Indian thought. And since they did not know Sanskrit and Swamiji wrote in English, that was their access for a lot of people. And that is my message to you, why I'm here. I've done one book with the help of Manogna. You need to do these books for your Guru also. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's really enlightening. Yeah. So, quoting from Krishna, who says to Arjuna, Klaibhyam masma gamaf partha, kshudram hridaya daurbalyam, tyaktotishta parantapa. So, just get up and do work. That was the whole essence of what Sir spoke. Really, I have no words to explain his work. So in one word, if we can say that, it is nothing but intellectual kshatra that was under demonstration here, speaking in front of all of us for some half an hour. Thanks a lot, sir. We have no words to express our gratitude. It was really great. Now I request Manogna madam to address us all. Thank you.
Yellarigu namaskara. It's an absolute honor to be speaking on this dais in the presence of incredible people and from the platform of the Swami Vivekananda Study Circle. I think Rajivji has given a fantastic background to the book which is at the heart of the session here today. Over several millennia now, India and before that Bharata, we have brought forth such tremendous insights and spiritual and material wealth to the global stage. We have developed systems across so many domains impacting man's life, each of them so meticulously and interconnected through our own systems. There is a framework in which this can be positioned and compared with systems, other global systems. And that is what Rajivji had once introduced in his previous books, which is integral versus synthetic unity. Now, in integral unity, the idea and the paradigm is that all the component parts don't exist independently by themselves, but cohesively come together to form a whole. For instance, when we think of a plant, right? Whether it is the leaf, the stem, the plant, the soil, the seed which gave rise to this, the sunlight, the nutrients, all of this combine to give an integral and intrinsic unity to it. In contrast, we can think of maybe a man-made object, such as a mobile phone or a car or any such object, where the individual components are assembled together. They have an independent existence, but you bring them together with an explicit purpose for a particular role. The unity which characterizes this kind of a paradigm is what we have called synthetic unity. Now, the Bharatiya schools of thought are entire, right up to the highest summum bonum, what the concepts of Brahman and the concept of Brahman being Satchidananda, that flows in a beautiful manner to all the darshanas and to all the paths, innumerable paths that we have for man to pursue and ascend those highest planes of consciousness. Now, when you have a Western mind, or when you have a mind which comes from the paradigm of synthetic unity, such as in this case, Ken Wilber, who is an American theorist, and he has been a prolific writer. He has been producing works since the 1970s, consistently. And as Rajivji pointed out, he's been hailed as the Einstein of consciousness theories. So when you have a Western mind coming from a synthetic unity background, analyzing the insights and I would say even proprietary knowledge of our dharmic systems, the distortions and misrepresentations that can arise when one does not provide the mutual respect which is necessary between the two systems, does grave injustice and gross misrepresentations of the receiving one. Now, because of the Kurukshetra we find ourselves in today, where we are, we have to account for the last several centuries of history, where we've had several players in multiple forces engage with us, and we have not always emerged at the top. We have been, unseated from a position of equality. When we have this kind of a history, what happens is the engagement between the two civilizations is one of inequality, and the dominating civilization can appropriate and mine the insights of the dominated civilization. Unfortunately, that has happened in the battleground for the consciousness theories. When you have the insights about mind, when you have the insights about the psychology of man, which the Bharatiya darshanas and the Bharatiya schools of thought have put out for millennia and practiced through our own systems, when these meet the mind of somebody who wants to mine them for the sole purpose of fitting it into the Western frameworks, what we have is a case where Vedic framework gets subsumed under the umbrella of Western universalism. So we have used this framework of integral and synthetic unity extensively in this book to analyze Wilber's approach to the Bharatiya consciousness schools. Another important framework we need to keep in mind before we go into the part 2 of this book, which deals with the specifics of the appropriation and the distortions, is understanding even the framework of U-turn, right? Rajivji mentioned digestion. Digestion is when you have a dominant civilization mine the proprietary insights of the prey civilization and museumize the latter while they become strong themselves, using these insights and put them into their frameworks. When that is carried out by individuals over, with certain patterns, those patterns which emerge are what we have called as the U-turn theory. There are 5 key steps in this U-turn theory. The first stage is when you have a U-turner, or when you have, a mind approaching from a synthetic framework, approach the source civilization from a place of benign curiosity. It could be curiosity, it could be genuine interest. We're not saying every Western scholar becomes a U-turner. What we are saying is these are patterns which have been prominent. So the first stage is one of what we've called discipleship, where there is genuine interest, maybe, curiosity to understand what this other system is. Then comes the second stage, which we call decontextualization. In this stage, the proprietary knowledge and insights of the source civilization are removed and made universal knowledge, right? So it is a sort of, you take, proprietary intellectual property and you make them as universal shareware, where where nobody is paying you any license or trademark fees, but your system has become now the general shareware. So that decontextualization has certain technical concepts, and one of them being perennialism. Even though you have gurus like Swami Vivekananda, and when you have Sri Aurobindo, speaking about insights which are from the Bharatiya civilization, which emerge through the process of yoga, which emerge, due to the insights of the rishis, when these insights are taken and made global. And they're made perennial. So you have decontextualized this knowledge. The third step is, of course, recontextualization. These insights are now situated and localized into Western frameworks, into the receiving system. The fourth stage is what we call arson. In arson, so you have the robber not only robbing the bank, but he is going to burn it down to make sure that there's no trace and the trail is removed. So the proprietary knowledge which you had of the Bharatiya civilization, which has now been perennialized, is now presented as though it is not its own. And the distortions and the schisms which emerge due to the synthetic mind studying this source civilization is passed on to the source civilization, which is a grave, grave distortion. So this recontextualization is stage 4. And stage 5 is all this appropriated knowledge, disfigured, bootlegged, comes back to us exported, and we become the recipients of this system. That is unfortunately the stage we currently are. Over the past more than century to 1.5 century, the knowledge and the insights which Swami Vivekananda, from the Vedic system, reinterpreted in the modern language and idiom for the Western audience, traveled the globe, had Sri Aurobindo as his Shishya take it to the next level. His Purna Yoga synthesizes and brings together all of the diverse aspects from various darshanas and branches of the Indic systems. Now that has been taken, subsumed into just one quadrant of Western universalism and being passed back into Bharata. And it's at this fifth stage that we unfortunately have been now for the past several decades, and the stage at which Rajiv ji found the Sri Aurobindo studies engulfed in. This book is the first comprehensive pushback against this sort of an appropriation. There are two parts to it. Part one traces the journey of Rajiv ji and his interaction with the Aurobindonian movement and how that entire discourse of Sri Aurobindo's studies was altered. Those who were actually supposed to keep up with how these models from Bharata are being studied in the West and provide a scholarly response, provide an appropriate response, instead were willing to take over the bootleg products. How did they respond? And who are the small set of people who supported the pushback? And in part two of the book, we analyze the entire work of Wilber right from his first stage in the 1970s. Wilber organizes his own work into 5 stages, 1 to 5, and the present one, what we have. So we have studied all the major words in each of these phases, done a one-on-one mapping between what is it that Wilber has done, what is the source and original in Swami Vivekananda's work and Sri Aurobindo's work, and what is the trail and the whole, way in which, the patterns in which these have been mined. To each of these phases, we perform this analysis. And this is important and crucial, not just specifically to Sri Aurobindo's studies, but for the larger interpretations of the consciousness studies from the Bharatiya Drishti, which is happening at the global table today. We are, of course, growing towards newer technologies, newer heights that materialism is reaching, newer morphology which is happening. But how will we understand that morphology if we do not even understand the patterns which have fed that morphology? That is what this book is aiming to study and lay out, and we hope if not just the students, and of course students of Swami Vivekananda's work, Sri Aurobindo's work, but this is something everybody interested in these theories and in Bharata's knowledge systems. We hope they study these patterns and see if they can find other places to which they can be applied. We had the Lokarpana of this book day before yesterday in Delhi, and we hope to hear feedback from many who can read and question us about this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, madam. That was really compartmentalizing the current stage in which the country is. The way in which you explained the 5 stages, yeah, at least that is true. Yeah, nice packaging has been done, yeah, and then we are all the receivers of those packaging. So now we will go ahead with question and answer sessions. So our volunteers will be going ahead with the mic. So please ask your question, make it short. So make it relevant for today's talk, and then we can go ahead.
Namaste, Rajiv ji and Manogna ji. It's a great book. I haven't yet fully read it. I've been traveling, so I got it from Amazon a few days back and haven't yet read it. So my apologies in advance if my question is already answered in the book and it's repetitive. So I was obsessed with this topic 15 years ago. And because when I read Ken Wilber, I saw that many of these things are from Sri Aurobindo and Vedic thought, in essence, but the way he packaged it in some ways, and even claimed that his synthesis was a meta-synthesis over and top of Sri Aurobindo's, which I found incorrect. Because in he personally follows and claims to be a Buddhist, and he claims to even have nirvanic experiences in his meditation, right, the void experience of the void. So in his approach, the relation of the absolute Brahman or the absolute and the manifested Brahman is very different in the sense that he considers all of these things as like a great play, but at the end of it, it's like a joke. That's what he considers. And in Sri Aurobindo, in some ways, like coming from Sri Ramakrishna's concept of jnana, it is the absolute and the manifested are not too different because it's the same. And that is very profoundly different in their overall synthesis, and that makes Sri Aurobindo's integral synthesis a meta-synthesis over on top of Wilber, even though Wilber came later. Despite Wilber borrowing several intermediate concepts. I don't know if this is fully addressed in this, because I think it's a very important aspect.
So there is a lot written on this and many other things. This is one of the issues. But to really pin down the point you're making so that everybody can understand and go deeper than you did. You see, in the Sri Aurobindo system, like all our systems, we are not afraid to bring Ishwar, Bhagwan, God, Shiva, whatever you want to say, Brahman into the world. We are not afraid, okay, because that is our metaphysics. But in the Western world, neither the Judeo-Christian nor the scientific want Bhagwan in the world now, because God in the religion, in the Abrahamic religion, stayed outside the world, made the world out of matter, stayed outside. It's like you make something that is external to you. So the dualism between God and world is absolute. They call it infinite gap. And the souls never merge, as there is no unity of soul and God like we have, of Atma Brahman. So the idea of that separation is very strong. In fact, when they came across pagans, people they call pagans in a pejorative way, were people who worshipped the divine in the river and this matter here and there like we do. They were Vedic, more like Vedic people. And they were called idol worshippers, and the 10 Commandments says that that is wrong, you cannot have idol worshipping. And so in the name of, solving the problem of evil and devil, they had to be persecuted. So these pagans were killed, their temples were destroyed because they were idols, and idols have to be destroyed. And same thing happened in India when Muslims came, the invaders, they had to do so much destruction in the name of destroying idols. So anti-idol is based on the premise that God is elsewhere, you cannot worship the God here in form, you can't worship. So this is a very fundamental difference, right? Now, and also in science, of course, they don't want to have God even there. In religion, the God is not here, but somewhere else. And in science, he's not neither here nor there. That's the difference. So he's playing games with this transcendence, immanence. He says transcendence, immanence, because he needs it. He's playing with his involution, evolution. That also he needs. And yet he has to dance in a way that he can keep his Western people happy, you see. So what he's doing is, he cleverly does not do justice to what Sri Aurobindo calls the descent of consciousness. Maybe you want to later elaborate a little. The descent of consciousness is very explicit, superconsciousness descending. The ascent is not separate, isolated, ascent evolving. The descent. So if you acknowledge there is a descent, then who descended? Is God descended? Well, the Christians don't like that God descended, because then you have to go back and apologize to the pagans and say, sorry, we for 1,000 years, we persecuted you and burnt all your idols, but sorry, we now realize that you were right and we were wrong. I mean, you can't do that, because then you're dismantling Christianity. You're dismantling the very basis, the fundamental concept of Christianity, that God, the only direct presence of God in the world is Jesus, as one and only time it happens. Never happened before. In our case, it happened. Never will happen again. One and only child, no daughter. That's God's relationship to the world. Now, the thing is that there are many attempts to reinterpret Jesus and say that, okay, he came, but it's metaphorical. When he talks about his body, the body of Christ, maybe the body of Christ is the church now. Church becomes the body of Christ after Jesus leaves. So there are many gymnastics and semantic games to try and rationalize and get the best of both worlds. They want to be loyal to this idea that Jesus is one and only, and it never happened again, never will happen. So you cannot do this thing without the Jesus, because that gives them a USP that only they have. So how do you control that uniqueness of history and then be able to claim that there is a divine presence everywhere? They can't do that. So this is where our skill in Purva Paksha comes in. Our people have to, and our Swamis are not interested in that. They are not sophisticated. They are not we're able to say, okay, we are having this interfaith conference, everybody loves each other, all that kind of stuff is going on, and you are saying you accept everything, religion is the same and all, but I want to push you hard on this. We need people who can push hard, who can drill deep and say, okay, now how do you reconcile this, between this and that? If you reconcile by denying that part, then these are some consequences you have to deal with. If you reconcile by denying the other part, then there are consequences you have to deal with. So you need very skilled people who know their philosophy, their theology and metaphysics, and be able to discuss and debate. This is what this book is doing. So for those who are serious debaters or want to be serious debaters and want to push back, that's why you have to read this book. Now I'll tell you, all my books are, complicated, large, and people scared and all that, but let me just tell you. Always I have an introduction, which gives you summary of the whole thing in few pages, and a conclusion in a few pages. In between, every chapter has a one-page summary, 2-page summary. So if you read the introduction and a 1-page, 2-page summary of every chapter and the conclusion, then in less than say 70, 80 pages, you will know the whole book. So think of it that way. Rest of the book is for those who want to go deep into a topic. If you get into a debate with somebody, we got the answer. So that is my request to you. Do not be afraid of the size of the book. You should take it on and read the introduction. It's very easy to read. Thank you. You want to elaborate on this?
We do address the specific point you raised in this book. There are two things Wilber does. One is he has no place for the divine in his schema, as Rajivji pointed out. Secondly, he also rejects all metaphysics. We analyze from the Aurobindonian viewpoint Wilber's schema, where his quadrant model, for instance, he has one for the individual, inner, collective, all of those. So when you reject both metaphysics and the presence of divine, how does the ascent amongst the planes of these consciousness, how does that get distorted? All of that we do analyze in this book.
Thank you. Just one point I want to make to your talk, sir, which is, there is one Swami in Ramakrishna Mission called Swami Medananda, who is also an Aurobindo scholar. He actually does like very insightful talks on how the concept of Vijnana of Sri Ramakrishna has evolved as supermind in Aurobindonian worldview, and in a much more elaborated way. And just want to point out it's very interesting.
I would love to meet this gentleman. So if you can send the link to T.S. Mohan, he'll pass it on to me. We would love to connect with him. Where is he based?
He used to be based in Kolkata. I think he's probably sent to US now. I don't know. I will find out and send you his contacts. California.
Okay. So what you do is connect him to us, send him a copy of this. You guys should do all that. Say that, okay, connect. And maybe some new project will come out of that. Yeah. That will be very good for everybody.
I think he probably has a PhD in philosophy or something. So
whatever. We love to, if that is his specialty, then we can utilize each other.